I stirred slightly in the early morning, irritated by the interruption of my sleep. "Rendy, don't open it all," I mumbled, pushing away the hand that had crept across the bed. My son, my only child, was insistent as always. Even at 17, he still wanted to be close to me, to share warmth in a way that, socially, seemed unusual for someone his age. Vocational school had made him more independent in some ways, yet he clung to the comfort of our bond, a remnant of his childhood. I sighed softly, feeling a mixture of affection and exasperation. "You're always up to something, aren't you?" I teased, though my voice carried warmth. Rendy's sigh reached me before I turned to face the wall, pulling the thick blanket up to shield myself from the morning chill. Was it wrong for a 17-year-old to crave the safety of his mother's presence? I had raised him alone since he was 5, after his father died in a sudden accident. That loss had left a void we both carried, Rendy with questions he rarely voiced, and I with a promise I made long ago to never remarry. My late husband's memory guided every choice I made, and though friends and strangers occasionally suggested companionship or new love, I had committed myself entirely to Rendy's care. Rendy's hands circled my waist again, and I felt the warmth of his lips against the nape of my neck. Despite my initial annoyance, I held my breath, letting him have this small moment of comfort. He had always been spoiled with affection, yet his gestures now carried a subtle shift. A teenage boy's way of testing boundaries, perhaps, or simply a longing for closeness before the world demanded his attention elsewhere. I reflected on how far he had come. From a small, quiet child, he had grown into a confident young man with striking features reminiscent of his late father. His stature now surpassed mine, his presence commanding yet gentle. He was talkative and charming, a stark contrast to his father's quiet demeanor. Yet his kindness and warmth mirrored the man he had lost. Watching him grow was both a source of pride and a subtle ache, a reminder that the years I had dedicated to raising him alone were slipping past quickly. This morning was no exception. Rendy, celebrating his 17th birthday, had spent the day with friends and his girlfriend Linda. Though he was experiencing first love, the simplicity of being near me remained essential to him. I allowed it, knowing that in these fleeting moments, he still needed his mother's love as much as he did freedom. As I listened to his soft breathing and felt the steady pressure of his embrace, a sense of peace settled over me. My heart swelled with a mixture of nostalgia, affection, and subtle fear for the future. Soon he would be out in the world, independent and strong, carrying not only the memory of his father, but also the lessons of resilience and love I had tried to impart. For now, however, he was mine, still needing the warmth of our shared mornings, and as I closed my eyes, I silently promised myself to savor these moments while they lasted. Rendy had always been a blend of charm and mischief. Even at 17, his personality was unmistakably vibrant, full of energy, humor, and that stubborn streak that had become his trademark. Unlike his late father, who had been quiet and composed, Rendy was talkative and expressive, often entertaining me with endless stories of his friends, school life, and occasional adventures around town. Yet beneath that lively exterior, he possessed the same warmth, kindness, and thoughtful nature that reminded me so deeply of his father. Watching him interact with the world, I often felt both pride and a pang of nostalgia. As he leaned against me that morning, softly tracing his fingers along my arm, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Since losing his father at such a young age, Rendy had grown resilient, adaptable, and surprisingly self-aware. He understood in his own way that our lives were anchored by the love we shared and the memories of the man we both missed dearly. Yet he was also discovering the boundaries of independence, testing them gently but insistently. Sometimes it was in small acts, like lingering in bed longer than I expected or requesting my attention when I was busy, and other times it was bolder, staying out later than I preferred, excited by his first experiences of teenage freedom. Despite these challenges, Rendy had a remarkable ability to balance fun with responsibility. He was diligent in his studies at vocational school, pursuing mechanical engineering with a natural curiosity and practical mindset that sometimes made me marvel at how much he had grown. Yet even in his determination to mature, he was still very much my little boy, the one who needed a reassuring hug after a long day or a shared joke to unwind from stress. His charm wasn't just physical, it was emotional. He could light up a room with his laughter, calm tensions with a kind word, and comfort me with an affectionate gesture that no one else could replicate. I often caught myself comparing him to his father, not in a way that demanded he mirror him, but in subtle echoes of character, the way he would quietly help someone in need, the patience he sometimes displayed, and the warmth in his eyes when he offered love without condition. But Rendy was also carving his own path, blending his father's gentle nature with his own spirited personality. He was learning about friendship, camaraderie, and even first love, all while maintaining the deep bond he shared with me. This duality, childlike dependence alongside emerging adulthood, was fascinating and a little terrifying. I knew the years were moving swiftly, and before long he would navigate life without me by his side. But for now, in these quiet morning moments, he remained fully present, bridged childhood and young adulthood with a simple, unspoken promise that no matter how much the world changed, our connection would endure. And as I listened to him stir beside me, I realized that this stage, this delicate balance between affection and independence, was fleeting, a treasure that I would cherish as long as I could. Rendy's 17th birthday had been a quiet but meaningful celebration. I had promised him a special gift, not the usual watches, clothes, or gadgets that teenagers often asked for, but something more personal, something that mattered to him in his own way. I knew this day would mark not only another year in his life, but also a subtle step toward adulthood. He approached me that afternoon with a mixture of excitement and a hint of shyness, the kind of look I had grown accustomed to over the years. "I just want to spend time with you, Mom," he said softly, his voice carrying both affection and anticipation. He wasn't asking for extravagant presents or lavish gestures. He simply wanted my attention, my presence. It was a reminder that despite his growing independence, despite his first experiences with teenage love, he still valued our bond above everything else. That love, of course, had begun to extend beyond the walls of our home. Some weeks ago, Rendy had admitted to having a girlfriend, Linda, the girl who lived just a few houses down. They were the same age, classmates, and occasionally hung out with friends together. I had listened carefully, nodding with a soft smile, letting him know that while love was a natural part of growing up, certain boundaries needed to be respected. "You can hang out and spend time together," I told him, "but always treat each other with respect and don't cross anyone else's boundaries." He had nodded solemnly, fully understanding that love, even young love, required maturity. That afternoon, he had spent time with Linda and a small group of friends. They went out to celebrate his birthday in a simple, fun way: ice cream, laughter, and the kind of carefree moments that make teenage memories so vivid. By the time he returned home that evening, it was late, and I was already half asleep, exhausted from running the bakery downstairs and managing household tasks. Yet as soon as I felt him climb into bed beside me, a smile tugged at my lips despite my fatigue. Even after a day full of birthday excitement, schoolwork, and first teenage romance, Rendy sought the comfort of our familiar bond. He curled up close, his arms finding their place around me instinctively. It was no longer just a child's need for affection. It was a young man's way of reaffirming connection before venturing out into the broader world. The contrast was striking: his playful, mischievous energy during the day, and this quiet, tender side at night that reminded me of his innocence and the years I had spent nurturing him. As I listened to his steady breathing and felt his warmth against me, I realized that this moment encapsulated something profound. Rendy was growing up, exploring love, independence, and the world outside, yet he still valued the anchor that our relationship provided. My heart swelled with both pride and a subtle ache, knowing that these years of closeness were precious, fleeting, and perhaps the last of their kind before he fully stepped into adulthood. For now, though, I let him stay close, cherishing the quiet intimacy of a mother and her teenage son on above memories and trust. I recognized the subtle shift in him, not just a son seeking comfort, but a young man learning to understand care and affection in a more nuanced way. It was a delicate balance, encouraging his independence while remaining his anchor. As he fell into a gentle rhythm of breathing and warmth, I silently promised myself to treasure these moments while they lasted. The future was coming quickly, bringing growth, distance, and challenges. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, mother and son existed in perfect harmony, a fragile, fleeting, yet profoundly meaningful connection that spoke of love, loyalty, and the inevitability of growing up. As the night deepened, I noticed a subtle shift in Rendy's presence beside me. It wasn't just the habitual comfort seeking of a child anymore. There was something new in the way he lingered, the gentle insistence in his touch, and the careful, almost tentative way he spoke. "Mom, I want to take care of you now," he whispered, his voice soft but sincere, as he stroked a few strands of hair away from my face. The words caught me off guard. I had expected him to be the one needing protection, the one I would always nurture and guide. But here he was, acknowledging the passage of time, recognizing that he could offer care in return. I turned slightly, facing him, and found myself captivated by his eyes, full of affection, responsibility, and a burgeoning maturity that reminded me just how quickly he was growing up. At 17, he was standing on the threshold of adulthood, yet his innocence still lingered in these quiet moments. The physical closeness, the warmth of his embrace carried a weight I hadn't anticipated. It was familiar yet charged with a subtle tension, a delicate awareness that he was no longer just my child, but a young man capable of empathy and understanding in ways that surpassed childhood. As I absorbed the sensation of his presence, my mind wandered to the many men who had shown interest in me over the years. From younger admirers to wealthy suitors, I had been courted and respected in ways that might have tempted other women. Yet my heart remained closed, bound by loyalty to my late husband and by the deep-seated promise to dedicate myself entirely to Rendy. Even now, as I felt his breath against my skin, I understood that no external attention could replace the intimate bond between mother and son, a bond forged through years of shared experiences, loss, and unwavering love. Rendy's gentle gestures, tracing my hairline, brushing my shoulder, the warmth of his breath, spoke of a new understanding between us. It wasn't inappropriate, nor was it consciously crossing any line. It was the natural evolution of our relationship, a reflection of his growth and his desire to acknowledge my sacrifices. I realized that while I had protected him for all these years, he was beginning to step into a role of reciprocal care, expressing gratitude and concern in ways words alone could not convey. The realization left me both proud and conflicted. My little boy, the one I had nurtured, guided, and shielded from the world's harshness, was becoming a man. The intimacy of our connection had always been my refuge, but now it was layered with complexity. I had to navigate these moments with sensitivity, allowing him the freedom to mature while cherishing the affection that defined our relationship. As the night wore on, I held my breath, letting him stay close while acknowledging the inevitable truth. Rendy's journey toward adulthood was accelerating, and our dynamic would continue to evolve. Yet in that quiet darkness, we existed together in perfect harmony, a mother and her son, bound by love, trust, and the gentle shifting of roles that comes with growing up. Morning came softly, sunlight spilling across the bedroom as I stirred from a light sleep. The bed felt emptier now, Rendy already gone to school, his presence replaced by the faint warmth lingering on the pillow. I stretched, running a hand through my hair, and took a moment to reflect on the duality of my life. Public strength and private vulnerability. To the outside world, I was independent, resilient, and capable. I managed the bakery downstairs with steady efficiency, handled household chores, and maintained a home that radiated warmth and order. Customers and neighbors saw me as self-sufficient, a woman who could handle anything life threw her way. Yet beneath that composed exterior, there was another truth. Raising Rendy alone after his father's sudden death had demanded not just physical effort, but emotional endurance. I had poured every ounce of my energy into ensuring his comfort, security, and happiness, often at the expense of my own needs. Nights like the one just passed, when he lingered close, were both comforting and poignant. They reminded me of the bond we shared, but also of the inevitable changes coming as he matured. Every gesture, every whispered word of affection hinted at the subtle shift in our relationship, from child seeking comfort to young man acknowledging care in return. Running a home and a business had taught me resilience, patience, and resourcefulness. The small snack business I had started on our terrace had grown into a fully operational bakery. Each loaf of bread, each freshly baked pastry carried not only flavor, but a sense of accomplishment. It was tangible proof that I could provide for my son, maintain our life, and create stability even without a partner. Yet the strength I displayed in public contrasted sharply with the quiet longing in my heart. There were moments when I missed companionship, the simple touch of understanding from someone who shared my burdens. But I had made a vow to myself and to Rendy's father to remain loyal, to dedicate my love entirely to our child, and I held to that promise firmly. Even as I prepared breakfast and opened the bakery that morning, my thoughts drifted to Rendy. He was stepping further into independence, exploring first love with Linda, managing school responsibilities, and gradually forming his own identity. I felt a mixture of pride, relief, and subtle fear. Pride in his growth, relief that he was responsible and kind, and fear that life would soon pull him away from the closeness we shared. The morning routines, the laughter, the shared glances, these were treasures I knew would not last forever. And yet, there was beauty in this tension. My life had been defined by sacrifice, but it was also filled with moments of profound joy. Watching Rendy grow, observing his personality bloom, and feeling the depth of his love and respect made the long nights, the challenges of single parenting, and the weight of responsibility worthwhile. My strength was visible, but my vulnerability, the quiet, private yearning for connection, for acknowledgement, and for moments like last night, reminded me that even the strongest women carry delicate threads of emotion. In that morning light, as the bakery bell chimed and the first customers arrived, I embraced both sides of myself, the resilient provider and the quietly yearning mother. Both were essential, intertwined, and inseparable. And at the heart of it all was Rendy, the son who had shaped my life, taught me patience, and filled the home with laughter, love, and a hint of bittersweet awareness that life's most precious moments are fleeting. As the days passed, I began to notice subtle changes in Rendy. The way he looked at me, the gentle pauses in conversation, the small acts of thoughtfulness, all spoke of a young man slowly asserting his independence while still holding on to the bond we shared. It was a delicate dance, one that both comforted and unnerved me. I realized that my son, who had once relied on me for every small need, was now beginning to understand care in a more mature way, offering reassurance and affection in ways that were not simply childlike dependency but thoughtful recognition of our shared journey. That evening, after finishing the bakery and returning upstairs, I found Rendy quietly reading at his desk. The way he sat, so focused and self-sufficient, reminded me that he was growing up. His teenage energy, once uncontained and mischievous, had begun to settle into a measured confidence. He still came to me for comfort, still sought my presence before sleep, but the nature of that closeness was evolving. It was no longer solely about him needing me. It was about an unspoken exchange of care, a recognition that he could also contribute to our shared life. Yet with this growing maturity came the need for boundaries, emotional and physical. I understood that part of raising him responsibly now meant guiding him toward independence while preserving the warmth and trust we had cultivated over the years. I reminded myself that his first experiences with love, like his relationship with Linda, were natural and healthy. Allowing him space to explore friendships, responsibility, and young romance was essential, even if it sometimes stirred a subtle anxiety in my heart. Rendy's gestures, once purely dependent, were now tinged with nuance. The casual way he leaned against me, the quiet attention he paid when I spoke, the small acts of thoughtfulness, these all hinted at a growing emotional intelligence. I felt proud and a little wistful, realizing that our relationship was shifting from mother and child to a more complex dynamic, a young adult recognizing and reciprocating care, even as he prepared to step out into the wider world. That night, when he climbed into bed beside me as usual, I allowed myself a long pause. I felt the familiar comfort of his presence, but also an awareness of the subtle boundary that had begun to emerge. I could feel the change. He was no longer entirely dependent, no longer just seeking solace. He was asserting his maturity while still cherishing our connection. It was a tender, sometimes confusing moment, a reminder that parenthood is a balance of love and letting go, of nurturing while encouraging autonomy. I took a deep breath, embracing the duality of the moment. Rendy's adolescence was teaching me patience, flexibility, and a deeper understanding of love itself. Our bond remained unbreakable, yet its nature was evolving. These moments, fleeting and delicate, were shaping not only his growth, but my own. I knew the years ahead would bring challenges, decisions, and new responsibilities for him, but I also recognized that the foundation we had built, love, trust, and mutual respect, would carry him forward. And for now, in the quiet night, I allowed myself to feel both the pride of watching him grow and the bittersweet longing for the innocence of the years that had already passed. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. I stirred awake, stretching and noticing the faint scent of Rendy lingering on the pillow beside me. The bed was slightly rumpled, a subtle reminder of the night's closeness. He was no longer there, already off to school, beginning his day with the same energy and independence I had nurtured in him over the years. A quiet smile crossed my face as I absorbed the emptiness that now felt full of pride, love, and a touch of nostalgia. Rising from bed, I moved through the familiar rhythm of morning chores. I showered quickly, pulled on a simple day dress, and headed downstairs to the bakery. The aroma of fresh bread and pastries welcomed me as I opened the shop. Ms. Rainey, our dependable housekeeper, was already at work, setting out the day's supplies and arranging tables. Her efficiency and calm presence reminded me that while Rendy was growing independent, the life of our home still relied on small, steady routines. I smiled at her. "Good morning, ma'am," she greeted, her tone gentle and attentive. "Rendy has already left for school with Linda. They decided to go together today." Hearing that, I felt a mixture of emotions. Pride, knowing he was making thoughtful choices about companionship and independence. Joy, recognizing that he had found someone to share his first experiences of young love with. And a subtle pang of wistfulness, the realization that he was stepping further into the world beyond me, beginning to build his life in ways that didn't always include my immediate presence. I prepared breakfast, arranged the bakery for customers, and served early visitors with a calm, professional smile. The small acts of daily life, rolling dough, kneading bread, taking orders, were familiar yet grounding. They reminded me of my strength, the routines I had built, and the life I had maintained despite the challenges of being a single parent. Still, my thoughts often drifted to Rendy. I wondered about his interactions with friends, his laughter, the quiet conversations he might be having with Linda. Each thought carried pride and a subtle anxiety, the natural tension of watching a child grow into an adult. Despite the busyness of the morning, there was a comforting continuity in our home. Rendy's independence was becoming evident, but the imprint of our bond remained. I knew that he carried lessons of empathy, love, and responsibility that I had instilled in him. The way he approached his relationships, handled daily responsibilities, and showed thoughtfulness in small gestures reflected the depth of our connection and the care with which I had raised him. By the time the morning crowd thinned and the bakery settled into a steady rhythm, I allowed myself a quiet moment by the window. I looked out, imagining Rendy walking to school, talking with Linda, experiencing the world beyond our home. I recognized that change was inevitable, that independence and growth were part of his journey, and that I needed to embrace the evolution of our bond. The morning after our tender night, I felt a deep sense of balance, love, pride, and anticipation for the chapters yet to unfold in both our lives. The rhythm of our household had always been a careful balance of routine, warmth, and quiet efficiency. With Rendy growing older and more independent, each day seemed to carry a subtle shift in our dynamic. Mornings were a mixture of school preparations, breakfast, and last-minute reminders, while afternoons and evenings revolved around the bakery, homework, and the small but meaningful interactions that kept our family connected. Ms. Rainey, our dependable housekeeper in her 30s, played an indispensable role. She managed household chores with precision, yet her presence was comforting rather than imposing. Her attentiveness allowed me to focus on both Rendy and the bakery, giving me a sense of security that I rarely acknowledged out loud. I often observed the seamless way she moved through tasks, preparing meals, tidying rooms, and quietly anticipating our needs before we even asked. Ms. Rainey was more than a helper. She was a silent guardian of our home's peace. She understood the unspoken routines of our family, respected our privacy, and contributed to the atmosphere of stability that I so carefully maintained. Rendy, too, had grown accustomed to her presence, greeting her warmly each morning while still maintaining the playful, teasing energy that defined his personality. Running a household alongside a bakery was no small feat. Orders needed attention, dough had to be kneaded and baked at the right times, and customers expected consistency and warmth. The early hours were often exhausting, yet they provided a sense of accomplishment. Every loaf of bread, every pastry carefully packaged and displayed, symbolized the life I had built from the ground up, a life of resilience, independence, and unwavering commitment to Rendy. The structure of daily tasks, though sometimes mundane, offered a rhythm that made the home feel alive and purposeful. Despite the busyness, I found time to observe the subtle shifts in Rendy's development. He had grown more self-sufficient, managing school responsibilities and social interactions with increasing maturity. Yet there were moments, quiet and intimate, when he sought my attention or lingered in my presence, reminding me that the bond we shared was not easily broken by age or independence. These moments, though fleeting, carried a depth of emotion that both comforted and tugged at my heart. I also reflected on the small but significant changes that came with his burgeoning adolescence: the careful attention to personal grooming, the pride in friendships, the cautious interactions with Linda. Each action was a marker of growth, a signal that he was preparing to step into adulthood while still valuing the foundation of love, trust, and guidance that I had provided. As I moved through the morning, preparing the bakery and tending to household tasks, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Our home was alive with activity, yet grounded in love. Rendy's presence, Ms. Rainey's support, and the tangible accomplishments of a life built with care and dedication created a delicate harmony. It was a household shaped by resilience, love, and subtle adjustments. Each day a step toward independence, each interaction a reminder that growth, though inevitable, need not sever the bonds that hold a family together. Evening fell gently over our home, casting long shadows across the kitchen and bakery. The day had been full, as always. Rendy at school, the bakery buzzing with customers, Ms. Rainey quietly managing household chores. But in the quiet moments between tasks, I allowed my mind to wander. I thought about the journey we had shared, the years of single parenthood, the sacrifices, the triumphs, and the small, fleeting moments of connection that defined our lives together. Rendy had grown so quickly, and with each passing day, I was reminded of the delicate balance between pride and a subtle ache of letting go. He was no longer just my little boy. He was a young man on the cusp of adulthood. The way he carried himself now, confident, responsible, aware of the world beyond our home, was both comforting and bittersweet. I marveled at his ability to maintain kindness and warmth, qualities he had inherited from his father and nurtured through our years together. Yet I also recognized that his growing independence meant our relationship would inevitably evolve. The intimacy we had shared, the quiet nights, the shared stories, the comforting embraces, would take on a different shape as he forged his own path. There was a subtle fear underlying my reflections, a worry I rarely admitted to anyone. What if he became so absorbed in his own life that the closeness we had always enjoyed diminished? What if the world introduced challenges or influences that I could not guide him through? And yet, even as these questions arose, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Rendy had grown into a young man of integrity, empathy, and thoughtfulness. The foundations we had built together were strong enough to carry him forward, even as I adjusted to the inevitable changes. I also thought about the quiet moments of tenderness we had shared, his soft whisper in the night, the warmth of his embrace, the gentle way he acknowledged my presence. These gestures, once the simple expressions of a child, now carried new meaning. They were subtle signs of his awareness, his capacity for care, and his willingness to honor the bond between us. While his adolescence brought new experiences, responsibilities, and relationships, these moments reminded me that our connection was enduring, adaptable, and profoundly resilient. As the evening settled, I envisioned the future.